Bruno Mars, the man who made the world dance to his rhythm, whose smile could light up stadiums and whose voice seemed untouched by time, finally spoke. For decades, whispers floated behind closed doors, rumors that fans, the press, even his closest collaborators dared not voice aloud. But at 39, alone in a dimly lit studio in Los Angeles, surrounded by nothing but faded gold records and the hum of an old piano, Bruno let it all out. The truth spilled in a trembling voice, laced with regret, a confession that would shake the foundations of his carefully curated image. He spoke first of the price of perfection. Behind the glittering red carpets and Grammy nights with the likes of Beyoncé and Jay-Z, there had been nights of isolation, of tears no one saw, of a body slowly giving way to exhaustion, and years of relentless touring. "I was invisible," he admitted, his voice breaking as he traced the rim of a whiskey glass, a habit he had never let slip publicly. Everyone knew Bruno Mars the performer, but no one knew Bruno Mars the person, the one who couldn't sleep, who felt trapped in the very music that saved him. His hands shook as he recounted the years of relentless pressure, the hidden panic attacks that came before every sold-out show, the moments when he wondered if the fame had cost him his soul. He revealed the story of his family, the quiet heartbreaks that never made headlines. His father's disappointment, always veiled in harsh words and critical glances, and the mother who supported him unconditionally, even as she watched him fight invisible battles. "I wanted to be everything for them," he whispered, eyes glistening, "and yet, I felt like I was letting them down every day." There were moments he described where he had collapsed in hotel bathrooms clutching his chest, unable to tell anyone how heavy the weight of expectation had become. Doctors had warnings about exhaustion and stress, but Bruno had kept going, pushing past the physical and emotional toll with nothing but the music to guide him. The rumors, he finally said, had always followed him. The whispers of unhealthy relationships, secret health scares, and even nights spent alone in luxury hotels, crying silently as he replayed mistakes over and over in his mind. He confessed to the times he had lied to fans, smiled for cameras when he felt like dying inside, hid a deep fear of failure that gnawed at him relentlessly. Hollywood friends, from Pharrell Williams to Adam Levine, had tried to intervene, sending calls he sometimes ignored, letting the machine of his career steamroll over his own humanity. "I was ashamed, he admitted. Ashamed that I couldn't handle it. Ashamed that the person everyone loved wasn't real." And then, there was the incident he had never spoken of publicly, a moment that haunted him daily. During a world tour, at a peak of fame when the world saw him as untouchable, Bruno had collapsed backstage. Medical personnel had whispered about arrhythmia, about the danger of ignoring exhaustion and stress. Yet instead of rest, he returned to the stage, hiding the trembling in his hands, the pounding in his chest, the fear that if he stopped, the world would forget him. In that private room, alone, he had sobbed like a child, confessing to no one, realizing for the first time that success had come with a price far greater than applause or trophies. Bruno's voice faltered as he spoke of regret, the moments when he hurt people he loved most, broken friendships with musicians who had once been like brothers, lovers who had fled under the strain of secrecy, the nights he didn't call his family because he didn't want them to see him weak. Each confession was a thread unraveling the tightly woven myth of Bruno Mars, revealing the man behind the sequins, the neon lights, and the endless tours. "I thought I could handle everything," he said, eyes downcast, voice barely audible. "But I was wrong." He ended the night in silence, staring at the piano keys that had once been a sanctuary. The gold records shimmered in the low light, each a reminder of triumph. And yet, behind every note and every cheer, there lingered an ache, a longing to be understood, to be human, to finally release the weight he had carried for so long. Bruno Mars had finally confirmed the rumors, but more than scandal or gossip, it was the raw, unfiltered truth of a man who had given the world so much, while quietly battling a storm no one could see. The following morning, Bruno awoke with a hollow ache that no amount of coffee or sunlight could lift. He wandered through his Los Angeles home, the walls lined with platinum plaques and awards that told the world he had it all, but inside, the silence was deafening. He admitted later that in those early hours, he had never felt smaller, more fragile, more exposed. The weight of decades of secrecy pressed down on him, a burden he had disguised with charisma, laughter, and impossibly smooth performances. I realized, he confessed, that for years I had been living a double life. The Bruno everyone adored, and the Bruno everyone didn't see, the one who feared he would never be enough. Bruno spoke of the rumors that had shadowed him for years, stories that spread like wildfire, some rooted in truth, others born from imagination. One in particular haunted him, the claim that he had been hospitalized secretly, that his health had deteriorated due to years of overwork and emotional strain. "It's true," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I've been closer to the edge than anyone knew. I hid it because I didn't want to be pitied. I didn't want to be seen as weak." Even the tabloids, he revealed, had only scratched the surface of his reality, never truly understanding the pain that came with performing to perfection while falling apart behind the velvet curtains. He spoke candidly about his private life, the relationships that never survived the glare of fame. Lovers who had adored him in private left quietly, unable to endure the late-night calls, the sudden departures, the loneliness that clung to him like a shadow. He described nights spent alone in luxury hotel suites, the city lights outside as dazzling as they were cold, and the sharp pang of isolation that came when he realized that applause could not replace intimacy, that fame could not fill the void. "I've loved and lost," he admitted, "and I've watched those I cherished drift away because I couldn't be fully present for them. Fame demanded all of me, and I gave it willingly, until there was nothing left." Family, he said, had been both his anchor and his storm. His father's stern expectations and lingering disappointment had haunted him, leaving a mark that even Grammy wins couldn't erase. And yet, in the same breath, Bruno spoke of the tenderness of his mother, of the countless nights she stayed on the line, whispering encouragement as he poured his heart into songs no one yet knew he was writing for himself. "They are the reason I kept going," he said, tears forming but restrained. "Even when I wanted to quit, even when I wanted to disappear, I remembered that they loved me, and I couldn't betray that love." But the price had been high. Misunderstandings, broken bonds, and a gnawing sense of guilt that followed him from tour to tour, city to city, hotel room to hotel room. Hotel room. Then came the revelation that shook everyone who had ever believed Bruno's public persona was untouchable. The confession of illness, of a body worn down by relentless ambition. "I didn't want anyone to know," he whispered, "because in this business, vulnerability is weakness." But the truth was undeniable. There were nights when he struggled to breathe, when the pounding of his own heart felt like a drum signaling a warning he could no longer ignore. Doctors had cautioned him, his friends had pleaded, yet he continued to perform, to smile, to dance, to sing, hiding the tremors and palpitations beneath choreography perfected over years of discipline. Each show was a defiance of mortality, a mask hiding a man terrified of being exposed as fragile. Even Hollywood legends had been witnesses to his struggle, quietly offering support behind closed doors. Bruno recounted secret dinners with Stevie Wonder, long conversations with Jay-Z about the cost of genius, and the subtle interventions of Pharrell, who had tried to steer him toward balance before it was too late. Yet for all the guidance, Bruno admitted he had felt unworthy of their concern, convinced that asking for help would betray the image of brilliance the world expected. The confessions poured out in fragments, like shards of glass: loneliness, fear, exhaustion, secrecy, and a yearning for something real in a world built on illusion. As the day faded into night, Bruno returned to his piano, the one place that had always felt like home. His fingers hovered over the keys, hesitant, as if each note carried the weight of decades of silence. In that moment, he spoke of his fear, the fear that the world would never understand the man behind the music, the man who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. "I just wanted to be honest," he said softly, voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted someone to see me as I am, and not as the legend they've built in their minds." And for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of relief, the beginning of a release from the secrets he had carried alone for so long. The nights grew longer, and Bruno's confessions deepened, revealing truths that even the most devoted fans could never have imagined. He spoke of the shadowed corridors of fame, where temptation and despair walked hand in hand. "There were choices I regret," he admitted, eyes fixed on the floor, voice trembling. "Opportunities I chased thinking they were freedom, but they were chains. People I trusted, lovers I believed in, they all left scars I carry to this day." Each memory, each story unfolded slowly, like peeling back layers of a life built under the unrelenting glare of the spotlight. The world had only ever seen the sequins and the smiles, never the tears that soaked hotel sheets at 3 a.m., the quiet apologies whispered into a phone, the silent remorse no stage could erase. He detailed an incident from years ago during a world tour in Europe, a night that had never been spoken of publicly. After a sold-out performance in Paris, he had slipped away to his hotel, only to be overcome by a violent panic attack. The walls seemed to close in, and he barely made it to the bathroom before collapsing. A concerned hotel staff called a doctor, who quietly intervened. "They thought I was faking," Bruno confessed, shaking his head. "I wasn't. I was terrified I would lose myself completely, that the music that saved me would also be the thing that destroyed me." For days he could barely leave the room, haunted by the fear that the life he loved most was simultaneously eroding him. Yet by the time the cameras rolled, he was back on stage, electrifying crowds with a smile that hid the raw wound beneath. Bruno spoke of betrayal, both personal and professional. Longtime collaborators he had once called family had pulled away, unable to handle his perfectionism or the relentless demands of the music industry. In private, he mourned the friendships that faded quietly, each loss a painful reminder that fame isolates even as it surrounds you with people. He shared the heartbreaking story of a musician he had mentored, someone he trusted implicitly, who later betrayed him in a legal dispute over songwriting credits. "It broke me," he whispered, fingers clutching the piano edge. "I had opened my heart, and it was used against me. It made me question everything, my trust, my judgment, even my talent." Then came the confession that no one expected. Bruno admitted that there had been moments when he feared for his life. Years of overexertion, stress, and hidden health issues had brought him perilously close to collapse. Incidents he had kept secret from fans, family, and even close friends. "I thought I was invincible," he admitted, voice cracking. "But I realized I'm just a man, and men can break." The revelation hit like a shockwave, the kind of truth that forces the audience to reconsider everything they thought they knew about a person who had seemed untouchable. Hollywood insiders had long whispered about Bruno's resilience, but no one truly grasped the cost, the toll it had taken on his body and his spirit. He paused, eyes filling with tears, as he recounted the moments of solitude that had become both sanctuary and prison. Nights spent walking through empty streets of Los Angeles, headphones on, music blaring, trying to drown out the voices inside his own head, the doubts, the fears, the regrets. "I've begged for forgiveness from people I hurt," he admitted, even when I couldn't tell them why. "I've apologized in songs, in private notes, in whispered prayer. Sorry." The confessions were endless, a tapestry of hidden struggles, of love lost, of fame's suffocating embrace. Bruno's vulnerability was stark, raw, and utterly human, a stark contrast to the polished perfection of his public image. By the end of that night, Bruno's voice was hoarse, his energy spent, yet a strange peace lingered in the room. He had spoken truths that had weighed on him for decades, letting the world glimpse the man beneath the sequins and neon lights. "I don't know what comes next," he said finally, staring at the piano as if seeking answers in the worn keys. "But I know I can't carry this alone anymore. I needed someone to hear it. I needed someone to know who I really am." And in that quiet confession, Bruno Mars revealed not just the rumors, but the raw, unfiltered reality of a life spent balancing genius and fragility, triumph and tragedy, love and loss. Bruno's story took a darker turn as he recounted the price of secrecy, the nights when the mask of fame became unbearable, when the applause felt hollow and the cameras seemed to mock him. He spoke of the hidden breakdowns, the sobs he stifled in dressing rooms, the trembling hands that had once held microphones like lifelines. I was a ghost in my own life, he confessed, voice low and trembling. Everyone loved Bruno Mars, but no one knew him. And maybe that was my fault. Maybe I let it happen. But the truth is, I was terrified of being seen as weak. His words hung heavy in the air, the weight of decades of concealment settling like dust over the gold records that lined his studio walls.